drop it. Cenk, Uygur, Kasparian, Joe Sanberg, everybody. Joe's here. Joe, a bit of a presidential possible candidate. So let's see how that turns out, but fun. Joe was on the show recently challenging Howard Schultz to a debate, which Howard has still not accepted.
Yeah,
it's interesting because he's doing town halls on CNN. He apparently likes to get his ideas out unchallenged, but we'll see if he picks up on your challenge, which I rather enjoyed. Okay, and I would love to see Howard Schultz engage in any kind of debate with any progressive.
Let me ask, if we have the debate, where do you think we should have it?
Maybe TYT, I don't know.
I feel like CNN would be a good venue. Like, just want to mess with you.
So on an Instagram, someone asked Alexandria Castillo Cortez, CNN or TYT? Just that question, right? She just leaned in and went, TYT.
Oh, good.
I have the same answer for you, Casper. Okay, TYT.
Yeah.
Okay, that would be great. Look, in all seriousness, I look forward to doing a lot of debates and a lot of interviews throughout the process. And we've talked to a number of people who are already, running for president or potentially running for president. And not just on presidential issues, but on policy issues. So Neera Tanden challenged something I said about the Center for American Progress's plan on Medicare Extra for all, which I said was neither Medicare for all nor extra. But I invited her on, and it's no joke. Like, I want to bring her on with Michael Lighty, who is at the Sanders Institute, and have a real conversation about Medicare. Well, dude, we're not Fox News and we're not television, so we don't have the same kind of time restrictions. So we can have a real conversation, whether it's Joe Sanberg versus Howard Schultz, or Neera Tanden having a conversation with Michael Lighty, and all of us finding out more about her plan as in the Center for American Progress, finding out more about Medicare for all, what the options are. I would love to do that.
I just remembered something that I've been dying to share with you. So Cenk and I have a little tiny bit of a disagreement about NPR, right? Because you believe that they have an establishment bias, and I certainly do see that.
Plus a banjo bias.
And a banjo bias, yes, that's true as well. But I feel like NPR, for the most part, overall does a decent job, but every once in a while that establishment bias does show. And it showed when one of their reporters was commenting on how phrases like Medicare for all are now used by establishment candidates, and how maybe it's not even necessary for Bernie Sanders to win or to enter the race, because he's already won in a sense, because now you have these candidates using his phrases and he's gonna come in, and how is he gonna differentiate himself from the other Democratic candidates?
Yeah, well, they say two hilarious things at once, which is, well, Bernie Sanders doesn't need to run, or even people that are in favor of Medicare for all, because there's already people that are in favor of Medicare for all in the race. And then they say, but Medicare for all doesn't have to mean Medicare for all.
They didn't say that in that particular segment.
Right, but in other articles, in other contexts, they do. So Joey, let me ask you real quick before we get on to the news.
Yeah.
So some are saying, unfortunately up to and including Elizabeth Warren, that Medicare for all could be Medicare for all, or it could be Medicare buy-in. What's your take on that?
We should have single payer Medicare for all. There should be no private insurance.
All right, well, see, that's clear. See,
yeah.
There was no stuttering, there was no equivocating, right? So there is a giant difference. And Medicare buy-in in the old days might have been progress when we were talking about the Affordable Care Act a decade ago, right? At this point, Medicare for all polls at 70%. If that's the direction we want to eventually go, why don't we just go there right now when it's enormously popular?
May I add, Cenk, that I'm a business person, a progressive business person, and I can tell you that from my perspective as a business person, Medicare for all, single payer, no private health insurance would be great for all Americans, and it would be also great for business.
Yes.
Because one of the things that's constraining the growth of business is unaffordable healthcare expenses. And so, believe it or not, the case for Medicare for all isn't just about what's moral, it's not just about what's progressive, but it would actually also be great for the economy.
Yeah, and also, I mean, I talk about this all the time because I feel like it's always left out of the conversation. But I hate having health insurance tied to an employer, because there might be entrepreneurial individuals who want to go out there and maybe start their own business, but there's that huge risk you take in leaving your healthcare coverage behind with your employer.
That's right.
And so I think it would actually spur some economic growth and new businesses by taking it away from being attached to a job.
That's right.
Yeah, and I just want to say one last thing about it. Look, so I founded one small business, Young Turks. Joe's founded Aspiration Bank. He's helped in the start of Blue Apron and worked in finance and worked in a lot of different businesses. And I can tell you, both from the perspective of the employee who then is not captured by one company and beholden to them for fear of like literally losing their lives if they move to another company and lose their insurance, but also from the perspective of the employer, we're saddled with so many more costs than other companies in other countries because we have this bizarre system that puts the healthcare under the employer instead of under the government, which is what every other developed country does. So, Joe, doesn't it in a sense create a competitive disadvantage for American companies?
Absolutely, and we're at a massive competitive disadvantage relative to our competitors in Europe and Asia, where the government is paying for health insurance, companies don't. So it hurts American workers. But if I may ask, what could the audience do if they want to see me debate Howard Schultz? What role could the TYT audience play in making this happen?
Yeah, so there's a lot of different things that folks can do. So first of all, if CNN is really having a town hall and you guys are in it, you could ask him, well, why won't you debate Joe Sanberg? Or, I would frame it that way because Joe's the only one that, as far as I know, has offered a debate. But ask him, Schultz overall, if you're gonna run for president, you're gonna have to be in a lot of debates. So are you already immediately at the start ducking a debate to begin with? In which case, do you have the mettle for this race? And I think that's a fair question. I think it's fair to ask that wherever Howard Schultz might be doing a speech or a rally or anything, although that is kind of funny. A rally, really? Who's gonna show up? But okay, I don't know, maybe if there's other billionaires who are like, let's go get him, Howard, no more taxes.
The question is,
right.
Will his rallies be Grande?
I think they might be, the other one is tall, right? Never mind.
Well, only one way to find out. So let's see what happens. Okay, all right, we got a lot of news for you guys. We got to get to it. So Whittaker was in front of Congress. We're gonna tell you about that in a sec. In the second hour, there's a couple stories that I absolutely love. I love all the stories, of course, as always, but the cat fight between Jerome Corsi and Roger Stone is hilarious. I can't figure out which one
They're all bad.
Yeah, they're all terrible people, but the fact that they're fighting each other is wonderful. So we'll get to that a little bit later. And then of course the Bezos story is enormous, but now it was, there's a little amusement in there, we get it, right? But there's a serious point about they're trying to extort this guy and I can't stand that, right? Even if I disagree with Bezos politically. But now it's taken a very serious turn with allegations that the government might have gotten his texts. Now, I don't know if that's true, but if it is, that's Watergate level stuff.
Absolutely.
So we'll talk about that a little bit later in the program. Don't miss that topic. All right, Anna, let's get started.
All right. Donald Trump's acting attorney general, Matthew Whitaker, agreed to take part in a hearing involving the House Judiciary Committee. Now, the House Judiciary Committee is very much interested in investigating all of the various scandals that Donald Trump is involved in, but they're also curious to see if Whitaker has played any role in helping Donald Trump in, defending himself in this investigation, or if he's had any type of influence in this investigation. So, they're doing a little bit of digging. Whitaker is clearly irritated that he's taking part in this, but just know that Whitaker has agreed to take part in this. So, look, this is probably the heart of the substance to the story, and then we're gonna go to the fun stuff, which is the fighting that took place during this hearing. So Whitaker testified that he has not interfered in the special counsel investigation, that he oversees or denied funding for it, as Democrats pressed him on everything from his conversations with the president and other White House officials to his decision not to recuse himself from the Mueller probe. Now, I would argue that it was important for him ethically to recuse himself from the Mueller probe because of his previous statements about the investigation. He called it a witch hunt. He essentially agrees with the president in that there's nothing there, that it's nothing more than a politically motivated attack against Trump. And so given that he had made those statements, he should have recused himself, but he's refused to do so. So that's what essentially spurred this hearing, and we're gonna show you clips from it in just a moment. Before we do though, do you wanna jump in with anything?
Yeah, so Whittaker was desperately trying to avoid testifying. Then he came out and said, well, I'm not gonna tell you any conversations I had with the president. And then he said, okay, fine, I didn't talk to the president about this investigation. So then what's the issue with testifying? So why bother fighting it? So what I couldn't quite figure out is what he's hiding. Now, the unfortunate thing is he's gonna be gone in about a week. So we might never find out what he's hiding, but he seemed, and we'll show you in some of the clips here, seemed intent on running out the clock and making sure that they don't get to certain topics. But it was hard to discern what topics he was trying to avoid.
Exactly. So we're going to start off with Representative Nadler, who is the chairman of the House Judiciary Committee, questioning Whittaker, and just pay close attention to the way Whittaker handles these questions.
That at least one briefing occurred in December before your decision not to recuse yourself on December 19th and Christmas Day. Is that correct?
What's the basis for that question, sir?
Yes or no? Is it correct?
It
is our understanding that at least one briefing occurred between your decision not to recuse yourself on December 19th and 6 days later, Christmas Day. Is that correct? Simple enough question. Yes or no?
Mr. Chairman, again, what is the basis for your question? You're saying that it is your.
Sir, I'm asking the questions. I only have 5 minutes. So please answer yes or no.
No, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to, you were asking me a question. It is your understanding. Can you tell me where you get the basis?
No, I'm not going to tell you that. I don't have time to get into that. I'm just asking you if that's correct or not. Is it correct? Were you briefed in that time period between December 19th and Christmas Day? Simple question, yes or no?
Congressman, if every member here today asks questions based on their mere speculation.
All right, never mind.
The way he handled that, I think, makes him even more suspicious. Like, why can't you answer that question? You decided that you would not recuse yourself. That's the whole point of this hearing, why you decided to do that. Why can't you answer the question? Why is that so difficult?
Well, I think also Nadler said later that whether or not you answer this question now, we're gonna get the answers even if it's as a private citizen in your next stage, right? What's crazy about the Trump administration isn't just that they're conservative or not, right?
That's
it's
right,
that
yeah.
They don't believe in same rules for all. And they totally flaunt it to us that they are beyond the rules. And it's just such BS.
Yeah. So whatever that meeting was between December 19th and 25th, well, that might be something he's hiding, because Nadler's right. It's a really simple question, because he didn't get into the hard questions of what was the meeting about, who helped you make the decision about recusing yourself, some questions that they asked later. But did you have a meeting? It's not a hard question. And so when he goes to try to avoid that question, it's obvious that he's stalling, and there's topics he desperately does not want to talk about.
Well, if that provided some evidence that he was stalling, the next video will provide even more.
In your capacity as acting attorney general, have you ever been asked to approve any request or action to be taken by the special counsel?
Mr. Chairman, I see that your 5 minutes is up, and so I'm here voluntarily. We have agreed to 5-minute rounds, and
I've never seen anything like that. That was unbelievable.
Look, I actually, he's a rookie. He doesn't have a lot of experience. That's why Trump picked him, just to be a loyalist. He never got confirmed as Attorney General, and that's why now William Barr is going through that process. And he's acting Attorney General. It's a thing that Trump invented, right? And so he picked this random dude because he had publicly said that Trump is right and Mueller is wrong, et cetera. So he comes in here and makes a rookie mistake, because you don't want to be laughed at in front of the whole country, saying, I think your time is done. That's not how it works. But I'm not as, if that had just happened by itself, I wouldn't be as freaked out as everybody else. But he kept going back to Hey, there's only 5 minutes. He kept reminding everybody over and over again throughout the hearings, throughout the day. There's only 5 minutes, remember. So what does that mean? That means somebody coached him. Dude, you just got to run out the clock on everybody. Everybody's only got 5 minutes. His consultant or whoever told him.
Like he watched too many episodes of Uyghurs and thought he could run out the clock in the basketball game and there's no shot clock, right? But this isn't college basketball. This is the rule of law, and they don't seem to want to play by the rule of law.
I just realized something. He's very Trump-esque in being unwittingly transparent about what he's doing, right?
Exactly.
Like other politicians are usually a little savvier. They would try to run out the clock, but they wouldn't just brazenly say that they're running out the clock. Like he didn't use those words, but obviously since he kept mentioning you're running out of time or your 5 minutes is up, that's what he's hyper focused on. And that's why even when it came to very simple questions, he wouldn't answer, he would try to go around in circles. It's just very strange behavior, especially from someone who keeps saying that he hasn't done anything wrong and that he's doing everything ethically, even though again he should have recused himself if he genuinely was worried about ethics.
So it's just a great point by Anna. And I hadn't quite thought of it in that exact way. Now, I've unfortunately been watching these hearings for over a quarter of a century because I'm old. And so I know how a professional does it. They come in and go, well, it's a good question, Congressman. And given my background, which I want to tell you about a little bit, right? They'll take like 90 seconds, and then the congressman will have to interrupt and will seem rude for interrupting in the middle of the guy's filibuster. This knucklehead is like Trump. Somebody told him, hey, run out the clock. Maybe they only have 5 minutes. He comes in and goes, you only have 5 minutes. Remember, you have 5 minutes, okay? You can only ask so many questions. You can't ask the questions I don't want you to ask because you've only got 5 minutes. Hey, that's not how you do it.
But the good news is he looks so ridiculous that probably even to some of Trump's supporters, his credibility is diminished, right?
I doubt it. I doubt it 100%.
For Trump supporters,
Maybe
I like that guy. I like that guy. He's strong. He ran out the clock strongly.
Yeah.
Anyway, very strong running out of the clock. So let me give you a statement from Whittaker, which you will find hilarious given the videos that we've been showing you. He said in regard to his participation in this hearing, I want to assure you that I will seek to answer the committee's questions today as best as I can, but I also must make clear that I will continue the longstanding executive branch policy and practice of not disclosing information that may be subject to executive privilege, such as the contents of deliberations or conversations with the president. So there are two parts there that I want to focus on. The first part is how he says he's going to answer the questions to the best of his ability. He didn't do any of that. He had no interest in answering any of the questions. If anything, his appearance there was to show Trump that he is very much loyal to him, and more importantly, that he's willing to fight for him. Because that was what this entire hearing was. It was very combative. And it was very clear that he is a supporter of Trump's and that he's willing to do what's necessary to fight for him. Yeah,
so two quick things on that. Look, there are bounds to, there's executive privilege is real, and there are bounds to what he's allowed to answer. But those bounds are around legality. So if they ask him, hey, what did you advise the president about policy? That's not necessarily a question that he should answer. But if they ask him, did the president ask you to stop the Mueller investigation, which is a question of legality, in other words, is the president doing obstruction of justice, he must answer that, okay? So those are the lines. I'm not sure Whittaker knows where those lines are, or if he does, whether he wants to adhere to those lines. And so that's why everybody mentions executive privilege. But then the question is, do you abuse executive privilege? And I think that that's the direction that he was going here.
You gotta be careful. He might not know the difference between the 3-point line and the free throw line, and it's a lot of lines.
A lot of blurred lines for him. And one other thing he wants to avoid has nothing to do with Trump. It has to do with him. He has been questioned publicly about a couple of questionable things that he's done. We ran a story here on the Young Turks about how he's involved in on the board of a company that ran a scam, and part of the scam was that he would then, as a former U.S. attorney, would go and write letters to people saying you might be arrested, and for trying to get your money back from this company. So that's pretty terrible stuff that he used his former office for. And he wouldn't even give back like $9,000 that he'd made to the people that courts had adjudicated were scammed. And they needed to collect as much money from the scammers as they could to give back to the people who had been victimized, and he wouldn't give back the money. So he did not want to answer that in national. So he's like, you get 3 minutes, 4 minutes, 5 minutes, right? So that's another issue he's trying to avoid.
Now, the other part that was noticeable during this hearing was how Democrats and Republicans would spar in efforts to protect Whittaker during the line of questioning. So I'm going to show you 2 examples of that. In the first, you have Representative Doug Collins and Representative Swalwell going after one another over Whittaker. It's insane. Take a look.
Contributions from foreign donors.
Mr. Chairman, point of order.
I'd ask you to stop the clock.
Now, gentleman will suspend. The gentleman will state his point of order.
On point of order, and I'm going to go back to this, and would again, undoubtedly, the majority does not care. But this is outside the scope of this hearing. This was not while he was employed here, and whether he outside had donors or not during the time he was not employed, making no connection either way is not inside the scope of this hearing. And that's not the call of this committee now. And look, I'm outgunned over here. I have no votes. This is not part of the call of the hearing. That's why there's plenty of things to do. Ms. Cicilline,
Well, the gentleman, Mr. Collins, if you want to sit down there with his lawyers, you can go sit down there, but you're not his lawyer.
Gentleman will suspend.
And neither of you, Mr. Swalwell. And if you ask questions that are actually part of this, instead of running for president down there, we could get this done.
You can sit down there. There's room.
Both gentlemen will suspend.
I mean, taxpayer money is being utilized for this nonsense hearing. Like, that's the thing that frustrates me. There's obviously nothing that's gonna come out of this, so why waste any time or resources on it?
Well, I mean, look, if they're doing their job and they actually unearth something, then something would come out of it. I'm actually in favor of the hearing. I am amused that, look, I get it. There's a lot of political theater going on. And Collins earlier made a impassioned plea to stop the political theater. He's saying the other side is using hearings just to make political points. These guys admitted when Obama was president that they would often use hearings to try to damage Hillary Clinton's presidential prospects.
That's right.
Okay, so you guys teach a master's class in political theater, so please spare me your fake outrage. And then if you notice, you took a shot at Swalwell, while you're trying to run for president, right? So I don't mind Swalwell's questions. I thought they were legitimate, and Collins is trying to help run out the clock. But if you notice, the chairman Nadler was like, "Let's pause the clock before you guys have this nonsense debate back and forth."
Well, Representative Collins certainly came to fight, and in the next clip, you're going to see him going at it with Representative Raskin.
Okay, Mr. Whittaker, see if you can get into this. Tell us where the money came from that you were paid, the $1.2 million that you were paid before you went to the Department of Justice. I'm asking my question.
Mr. Chairman, point of order, which overrules your question. Point of order.
The gentleman will explain his point. The gentleman will suspend. The gentleman will state his point of order.
Look, we're going to go down this probably many more times, but again, if you wanted to do a confirmation hearing, this is not under the scope of this hearing. This is not a confirmation hearing, and is not shown to be a.
Mr. Chairman, this goes to the
we're in the middle of the
point of order, Mr. Chairman. Is the ranking member just going to continue to interrupt when he doesn't like the flow of questions?
Excuse me.
I'll probably make a point of order when that needs to be made.
Right now, good if it'd be useful if it was actually a point of order.
Everyone will please suspend.
Maybe I'm being unfair to Representative Nadler. Like, wake up, like fight. I mean, you're losing control of what's going on in this situation. I don't know, I want more fire, I guess.
I don't know, he's in a tough situation. Like, he's got to let the Republicans make their point of order, but if Collins wants to interrupt every single speech with a point of order, yeah, it gums up the process. So it puts him in a very difficult spot.
You're being very weird today. Okay, I don't understand your commentary.
The gentlewoman will suspend. The gentlewoman will suspend.
Not consistent. Objection to the inconsistency in the way he's handling the story. No, I mean, but Republicans came to fight, and Nadler's the chairman. Like, wakey, let's go. You can't let him interrupt the line of questioning. You can't let Collins interrupt the line of questioning every single time like this.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Okay, I'm looking forward to Representative Kasparian handling some hearings.
I like that.
I wish, yeah, that'd be great. Anyway, all right, so we're gonna take a break, but when we come back, I'm gonna show you what fire looks like, and AOC's bringing it.
Yes. We hope you're enjoying this free clip from the Young Turks. If you want to get the whole show and more exclusive content while supporting independent media, Become a member at tyt.com/join today. In the meantime, enjoy this free segment. All right, back on the Young Turks. I want to read a couple of comments because they're fun. Peter Hamby on YouTube Super Chat says, there's a penalty in the NFL for delay of game. Whittaker should have been penalized for his delay of game to not answering yes/no questions.
I'm in favor. Yeah.
Okay. Cabbage takes it a little further on Twitter, says, contempt of Congress bailiff, take him to holding.
Can you do that?
You could technically do that, but if Nadler had then done that to a fellow congressman for constantly interrupting,
has that ever happened? Wait, that could happen? I didn't know that could happen.
Okay, I'd have to look into the rules on whether you could do it to a fellow congressman. You could definitely do it to a witness. Okay, so watch out for Chairman Kasparian if she ever gets a hold of these hearings. Anyway, but I also wanted to go to your points about healthcare. Max Salaria from the member section says, really untying healthcare from employment would be a huge win for labor. No more would bosses be able to use our health as a bargaining chip to keep wages low. That's right. So that's a great point. And Dropkick Brat on Twitter says, Anna's point is so important. Insurance kept us tied to my husband's former employer while we wanted to start a business. They revamped this year and the premiums hit 17% of his gross income, which is unbelievable. Wow. And she said for bad coverage, so silver lining, we're now self-employed. Okay. But yeah, it's a crazy backward system that doesn't make any sense. So now, speaking of good progressives, I want to tell you about Nomiki Konst. She's running for public advocate in New York and now widely considered among the top 3 candidates. She was just in a debate and she did fantastic in that debate. But what she needs to do is get to a certain threshold to get matching funds, and the matching funds are gigantic. They're 8 to 1. Okay, so for every $10 you put in, she gets $80. Okay, so but if she doesn't hit the threshold, she doesn't get it. So that's why it's so important. And the deadline's Monday. So if you can, especially if you're from New York, and the matching funds are up to $250, so it's meant for small donors, and so that's a great public financing system. So support NOMI, support the system in that sense. So the URL for that is bit.ly/TYT-NK as in Nomiki Konst. So bit.ly/TYT-NK. Your dollars can go very, very far, no matter where you are in the country, but especially if you're in New York, because they get multiplied by 8. And I want to just make one more programming note. Next week is our 17th anniversary. Oh, it's on Valentine's Day. Oh, okay. We're gonna have super fun guests and announcement for you guys, but also after the show is over, we're gonna run Hostmates Live again. So it's a great time to sign up, tyt.com/join, and then Hostmates is where we basically play the newlywed game where the host competed. Almost everyone who's watched it, I don't know if I'm saying almost just to be in case, but just in case, but has loved it. So if you're a member, please check that out. If you want to become a member, you go to tyt.com/join. Okay, Anna, what's next?
All right. The House held an important hearing on a very important issue that we mention here on the Young Turks all the time: the role of money in politics. Now, the real star out of that hearing was, unsurprisingly, Representative Alexandria Cortez, who found a way to ask a line of questions that made it abundantly clear that our system of government is moving further and further away from a real democratic process. Take a look.
If I want to run a campaign that is entirely funded by corporate political action committees, is there anything that legally prevents me from doing that?
No.
Okay, so let's say I'm a really, really bad guy, and let's say I have some skeletons in my closet that I need to cover up so that I can get elected. Mr. Smith, is it true that you wrote this article, this opinion piece for the Washington Post entitled, "These payments to women were unseemly, that doesn't mean they were illegal"?
Well, I can't see the piece, but I wrote a piece under that headline in the Post, so I assume that's right.
Okay, great. So, green light for hush money. I can do all sorts of terrible things. It's totally legal right now for me to pay people off. And that is considered speech.
Yeah.
I like you.
I mean, how great is it to have one of us, I mean, an actual citizen.
So good.
Inside Congress.
So good.
So these are actually fairly straightforward questions. It's not like she invented something amazing and new, but what's amazing is that no one else has asked them.
Absolutely, that she has, I mean, in the context of what Congress is today, she has the courage to ask the right questions, right? But in what our government is supposed to be, it wouldn't be courage, it would just be common sense. But look, I think most members of Congress don't ask these difficult questions because A, they're either benefiting from the system, they don't want to change it, they like the status quo, or for the members of Congress who don't like it and they do see it as a problem, I think they're afraid of retaliation, either by, donors who could work against them and destroy their chances at re-election, or by other members of Congress, who knows? But I just love seeing her, the youngest woman ever elected into Congress, fighting like this, holding up that op-ed from the Washington Post and calling out, the gentleman who wrote it. And it's not that she's calling him out; she's calling out what the policy is, what the law is, and it's a crazy law.
And as crazy as what she described is, also really crazy is self-financing. Cenk, you've often called for the need for full public financing, and AOC so eloquently talked about all of the holes and loopholes within the traditional candidate system. And those same problems also apply really terribly to self-financing. And we need people, even before self-financing is illegalized, to voluntarily disavow self-financing, even if they can. Because let's take, for example, someone who wants to self-finance a presidential campaign. In January of 2020, that person could borrow $1 billion from a foreign government. Pick your foreign government. And that's totally legal, right? And totally legally, that person could report the interest that they'd pay on that loan on their tax return. But that 2020 tax return, it wouldn't even be due until April of 2021. So that person who's self-financing by borrowing $1 billion from, let's say, a foreign-owned bank, could legally do so. We'd never know until after the election, and then could get $1 billion. And I'm gonna show how it could get even worse. Then that foreign bank could say, oh, you won the presidency, we're gonna forgive that loan. Now, continuing fully legally, that person would have to report the forgiveness of the loan as $1 billion of income, and the same foreign bank could say, okay, we're gonna loan you $500 million so you can pay the taxes on the debt forgiveness, and that isn't due for 50 years. So that person's presidency ends, the person reaches the end of her or his life, declares bankruptcy, the debt is never repaid. All of what I just described is totally legal and illustrates that how what AOC described is even worse for self-financing. And we might have some self-financing candidates this time around. I hope they'll voluntarily disavow self-financing until we finally illegalize it.
Well, I mean, so there's two components to that. Obviously, Howard Schultz, Michael Bloomberg are possibilities. And if they disavowed self-financing, they would obviously raise no money at all. Because is there a lot of small donors looking to give to Bloomberg to make sure that taxes on the rich remain low and that we do not get Medicare for all? So it's not a very popular position, which makes you wonder why they're considering running for president. But anyway, but think about what Joe said about loans, because there's a certain president right now who got a lot of loans from foreign countries in the past. We don't know, because we don't know his tax returns, to which degree they were quote unquote forgiven, which would then turn them basically into a de facto gift. And then if he self-finances his campaign, then that country helped him finance his run for president. And so that is a very interesting phenomenon. So that's why, of course, we should not allow private financing of elections. We should have public financing of elections so they serve public interest. And mainly AOC is pointing it out, and others have it in the past, because she doesn't take corporate PAC money. Now, if you do take corporate PAC money, it's uncomfortable to make that argument. Because look, Democrats will pay a lot of lip service to, oh, money in politics is bad and Citizens United is bad. And then, but what she's doing is more specific. Now, if you take money from the Medicare, the pharmaceutical industry, for example, might you be influenced? Can you do anything you want anyway to help the pharmaceutical industry when you're in Congress? The answer is yes. And other people are not gonna ask that question because they take money from the pharmaceutical industry. It's not just the Republicans. A huge majority of the Democrats do as well. That's why she's getting under their skin, because she's exposing it.
Absolutely.
You wanna make a little news?
Okay.
Right now?
Sure.
Okay. we talked about last time, I'm thinking about running for president. I haven't decided if I will. But whether I run or not run this time, if I run ever for any public office, I'll never self-finance a campaign. Because I believe that if my ideas are good enough, I can take them through the competitive marketplace and count on people to support those ideas. And if people won't support those ideas, that means they're not good enough. So if I run in 20, or if I run sometime in the future for anything, I'll never self-finance, because self-financing is bad for democracy.
Okay, so Joe made a really interesting point in there. If you can't raise money from small donors, what does that say about the strength of your ideas? So, I think the DNC did a good thing by saying that they're going to take into account how much money you raise from small donors into whether they're going to allow you to debate. That's a great first step, and you don't see me often complimenting the DNC, but credit where credit is due, and all we want to do is get to the right place. But I think that all the media would be in much better shape if they paid a lot more attention to that credential. Because why are we having this giant conversation about Howard Schultz if the only people who agree with him and support him are millionaire television anchors, right? Could he raise a single dollar in the rest of the country with his ideas if he had to do it from small donors? Has he? I mean, he's considering running for president. Has he raised any money from any real people?
And you know what, Cenk? Actually, Howard Schultz could do an incredible public service, because if someone who could self-finance says she or he's voluntarily going to not self-finance because it's bad for democracy, wouldn't that send an incredibly powerful statement? So I guess I have a new challenge for Howard Schultz. I challenge you to join me in a commitment that if either of us run for president, we are not going to self-finance even if we could, because it's bad for democracy.
All right, guys, we got to take another break. We got a lot more on Ocasio-Cortez. We want to come back and do that when we come back from the break. Come right back.